we're just going to make a start. Hopefully other people will join us as the night goes on. Tonight, basically, we're here to talk about welfare reform. In other words, cuts. A lot of people out there believe that this isn't going to affect them. The people in the room tonight giving the presentation are going to outline exactly how these sort of cuts are going to affect people. It's going to have an impact on probably every one of us in the room in some shape or form. So it's better to listen in and get a wee bit of knowledge of it rather than say, listen, you know what, I'll worry about it when it comes to my door. So tonight we'll have Alison and Joe, and basically I'm not going to be taking part in any of it. I'm just going to leave it to it, and then I'm sure any questions at the end we can certainly put them to them. So just ask everybody to put their phones on silent, so we're not having phones going off during the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, and thanks very much for the invitation along here this evening. First of all, maybe what I want to say, in case people are coming along to hear one thing, that I'm not a benefits expert. So I'm not the person here in the room who can fill your forms in for you, can help you, can tell you what to do. I think this lady beside me is one of those people who does have that expertise, but I suppose who I am is I am the General Secretary with NIPSA, one of the trade unions here in Northern Ireland, and have been heavily involved in the whole issue of welfare, what they call welfare reform, but it's really welfare cuts, and it's something that certainly we as a union have been fighting for now for probably the last 3 or 4 years. And like you, probably at one stage I thought this is never going to happen. But unfortunately it is going to happen, and we can't keep our heads in the sand, because for everybody in this room and for all our families and friends, for people who live in this community, it's very real, it's going to be very real, and people are going to have less money in their pockets. So that might mean the corner shop might close, because we're all going to have less money to spend in our local community. So maybe to start off by saying, as I said, I am not a benefits expert, and there's many people in this room who are, I'm sure, but maybe some, as well as perhaps local community representatives who in your local constituency offices will have advice workers there who can provide some information on benefits. There's also what they call the Benefit Entitlement Unit in the Social Security Agency can give you some advice. There's Advice NI, and there is the likes of the Citizens Advice Bureau. And my strong advice to you is, if you're currently claiming benefits, or if you're going to claim a benefit, or you're somebody in your family or your friends, is don't just go ahead and fill the form in. Because, and it's not about being honest or dishonest, it's about knowing the right words to use in a form. So you could use the same words and not get the right outcome. So people in the advice sector do have lots and lots of fill these forms in for people all of the time. They know the right words to use, and they know then what will save you having to potentially go through an appeal. So some of the things, you know, it's about keeping your head in the sand, and maybe it'll never happen, it'll not happen to me, and it's always something that's going to happen to somebody else. Well, the reality of the situation is that it's coming, and it's coming very soon. For example, but maybe before we get into what is the bad bits, some of the good bits that's going to come your way, I'm going to say good bits, better bits perhaps than people in the rest of the UK, so people living in Scotland, people living in England, people living in Wales, some of the things that they have that they would be envious of here in Northern Ireland. So one of the things is, if you've read The Sun, the Daily Mirror, any other newspapers over the years, the last few years, you'll heard of something called the bedroom tax, where if you have a spare room or spare rooms in your house, and you're in receipt of benefit or social security benefits, is that then you will have to pay or not get housing benefit for that room. So for example, if you had one spare room, that might be about £9 a week, 2 spare rooms, about £14 a week. However, through some of the work, and certainly it was one of the things that certainly NIPSA as a union, we argued with all political parties, green, orange and everything in between. We don't discriminate in any way in relation to who we'll speak to, as long as we get the right outcome for our members and for citizens. So what we have been able to do is we've been able to persuade political parties not to enact the bedroom tax here in Northern Ireland. And I'm sure you'll have read it about people basically having to move out of their homes because they can't afford the additional rent, or that they end up getting into major debt, which then therefore somewhere down the roads the bailiffs arrive at the door and people are evicted. So if anybody talks to you about the bedroom tax, we won't have that. If you live, if you're in receipt of housing benefit, you might over the next period of months receive a letter from the housing executive, but that will not be to tell you that you will have to be impacted by that. So from here on in you can forget about the bedroom tax, but you might read lots about it. So I do think that's a major, major plus for us here in Northern Ireland, that we don't have that, because there's parts of England, for example, where people can no longer afford to leave, and people are having to leave, particularly if you live in some of the big cities where rents are extremely high, is that it's almost like ethnic cleansing. So it's cleansing people out of more well-off places because they can't afford to pay the rents. The other thing is that's different here in Northern Ireland than it is in the rest of the UK is in relation to, currently if you're in receipt of housing benefit, that goes straight to your landlord, whether that be the housing executive, whether that be a private sector landlord, or whether that be a housing association. So you never get the money, and you might think, I would like to get that 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds, £100 a week, and then I could do something else with it. But we fought and argued hard that the housing benefits should go straight to landlords, because the one thing is, with all of these other cuts coming down the road, is that we're all the same, is that we'll say, we'll take a wee bit out of there, maybe we'll not need that much, we'll take £10 this week out of our rent and we'll use that to buy school uniforms for our kids, or it's coming up to Christmas, or whatever the issue might be, and then before you know it, you're not £10 or £20 in debt in relation to your rent, it's £100, and then it's £200, and then it creeps up. So one of the issues that certainly we argued strongly for is that rent would continue to be paid direct to the landlord, and if nothing else, then people continue to have a roof over their house. And you will hear particularly horror stories in England where, again, people have got into hundreds, thousands of pounds of debt and then have been evicted from their homes, and then all the issues that come with that. I suppose one of the issues that we'll go on and talk a wee bit about tonight is the issue of, you've maybe heard, universal credit. But that's not the biggest issue that's coming just right now. The biggest issue is people who are in receipt of disability living allowance, of which there's many, 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 and there could be people in this room, or your family members or your friends. That's changing in June to what they call personal independence. Personal payment, thank you. And that's going to have an impact now. That's for new claimants. From June this year, you'll have to go through a new assessment process, which is much more stringent, much more difficult to get people through a process. However, and then for people, what they call migrating on, so if you're currently in receipt of DLA, or any family member or friends, is that then will be a process of which you will be moved on to what they're going to call PIP. And certainly for people in the advice centre that I've been talking to, and our members in the Social Security Agency, is that it's difficult enough to get DLA, but part of the issue is that the new PIP is filling in those forms. Is if you have maybe a physical disability, it's slightly easier. If you've got a mental health issue, the work capability assessment, as it's called, isn't really, in my view, geared towards that, and can be very difficult. And potentially, people who are in receipt of DLA will be taken off. And as you know, that's a significant amount of money, and therefore this is why, again, I would continue to stress is do not just complete the forms yourself. Get advice, go to your advice workers and get advice from people who do this day and daily. And get the advice from people, because once you would be taken off the benefit, it's going to be more difficult to get back onto that benefit again. So that's another issue. Another issue you've probably heard, you may have picked up about, is a thing called the benefit cap. So at the minute there is no cap to the amount of money that you can get through the benefit system, depending on the number of children you have, your circumstances, but includes your housing element. Okay, so it includes your housing benefit. The benefit cap there will be capped at 26,000. So if you add up all of your benefits, so if you add up, say for example your rent is £80 a week, say for a 3-bedroom house, and then you add into that, so that's about, by my calculations, that's over £4,000. So that only leaves you 16,000. Sorry, so it's 26,000 at the minute, but from this summer it's gone down to 20,000, so a significant reduction. On the 26,000 cap, there was about 400 odd households in Northern Ireland impacted, so there could be people in this community impacted. Once it drops down to 20,000, there's about 4,000 to 5,000 families impacted, so there's definitely people in this room that will be impacted by that. So it'll be those with larger families, higher rents. All of those things will have a negative impact in relation to this benefit cap issue. Because I worked out very roughly £300 a week once you take your rent out. So the time you pay for your heating, your lighting, your food, kids' clothes, their Christmas presents, all of those issues, there's not very much left. In fact, there's probably nothing left. And as well as that, in relation to other issues, like for example, child benefit, and the benefit cap will also apply to in-work families. So you can see how this can have a very negative. So, and if you have more than 2 children, for those who are in receipt of tax credits, then that cap will also be impacted. So therefore, if you have more than 2 children, that will again have will be capped really at 2 children. So you can't get the child element if you have more than 2 children. This is some new things that are coming down the road. Child benefit, again, that has been capped now for a period of time. It was frozen, well, I would say frozen, there was 1% really, suppose from the coalition government came in 2010. They had child benefit just at a 1% increase, and now it's frozen for 4 years. So what does that actually mean? You know, so by the end of this government, so by 2020, which believe me, we'll be there before we realise it, it means that child benefit really in real terms has been decreased by £3.60. So if you just got inflation, it would be £3.60 a week more for the first child and £2.35 for subsequent children. So if you look at inflation, and I did a very rough calculation, is in another 2 or 3 years' time, a family with 3 children will be about £12 a week worse off because child benefit isn't increasing. So just think what you could do with another £12 a week. You know, you could buy perhaps your kids something more. You could put more food on the table. You could buy them that little extra for Christmas, or you could just keep the wolves from the door for another week or so. So that's some of the issues around child benefit and the benefit cap. And then there's this new benefit that's coming in called universal credit. So it'll impact on working families and out of work families. Because things like tax credits, so if you're in work and you're in low paid employment, then you'll be in receipt of child tax credits or working tax credits. but again, they're attacking the amount of money that's paid there. Housing benefit will also be in what they call universal credit. Your employment and support allowance, and your job seekers allowance, income support, and bits and pieces of social fund will all be wrapped up into this new benefit called universal credit. And it will start to be introduced from January next year. And you might think, great, because certainly as a union we would be in favour of the simplification of the whole benefit system, because it's a nightmare trying to fill in all the different forms. And you might think, well, you know, if I need to go and fill in one form to get my housing benefit and any other sort of workplace or benefits. However, that's not the case. While you only have to go to a one-stop shop, is that it's about actually paying you less overall. So one of some of the things about universal credit, which again has been now in some areas of the rest of the UK, but I mean, what they had expected, the UK government by this stage, is about 8 million people would have been on universal credit. But however, there's been so much money wasted on computer systems, is that £160 million on a system that they developed to try to deal with this was scrapped. So just think what £160 million could do for people who are, for no fault of their own, are in receipt of benefits or out of work. And that money has just been wasted, ripped up, thrown in the bin, and that IT system has been scrapped. And they're starting now with a new, or started about a year ago with a new IT system. But at this point in time, they've only got a relatively small number of people on the system, and there's as many clerical workarounds. That's because we talk to our other unions in the rest of the UK, and they give us this information. So, and what they're telling us is that, you know, if you talk to the officials of the departments and stuff, they'll tell you everything's going well, but the reality of the situation is that it's going very badly. But because so much money has been invested in this, and because it's an ideological position of taking money out of the benefit system, I mean, they said in the last budget is there was £12 million to come out of the benefit system. That's out of your pockets, that's out of working families and out of work families' pockets. This is cuts to, and I'm sure anybody in the room who is on benefits at this point in time, is you don't have lots and lots of spare cash at the end of every week to spend on things. But yet, you know, you would hear us say as a trade union, a cabinet of millionaires, you know, so George Osborne, the Prime Minister, they're all millionaires. So they really don't care about you and I and about ordinary working families or out of work families. It's all an ideological issue. And they've introduced, as part of this universal credit thing, a thing called conditionality and sanctions. And you might think, what does all this mean? Conditionality is you will have to sign up, before you'll get this new benefit of universal credit, you will have to sign up to certain conditions. So if you're a single parent or a couple, and you've only been able to secure, you either don't have any work or you're in part-time work, you will have to say, right, well I am out of work, I'm looking for a job, and I have to now look for work 37 hours a week. And you will have to prove that you have been filling in application forms, you've been trumping around different places looking for work. Because you'll hear this phrase, you know, this is about making work pay. Well, I don't know about anybody else in this room. Okay, maybe, and I've been fortunate that I've been in a job, and I'm in a job. But say, for example, I was out of work tomorrow. Okay, so it might be a week or 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I can get the papers, I can go onto the internet, I can go to the library, I can fill in forms. However, there's not that many jobs out there for people. I mean, I have 2 members of my family looking for work and they haven't got it. And believe you me, is that I keep saying to them, look, one of them's a student and I say, go even and get, you know, a part-time job. They're not there. So if they're not there for students, they're not there for anyone. So there isn't. And what work is there at the minute is low paid work. So if you were, for example, working, say, 16 hours a week, that's not enough. You need to go and look for work for full-time hours. That's what they call the claimant commitment. That's what will be said in this claimant commitment that you will be asked to complete. And if you don't complete it, and if you don't do it, then you don't get your benefit. So it's almost holding a gun to your head. In relation to some of the issues around the claimant commission, so okay, you say, right, I will actively seek work and fill in these application forms, do what I have, and you come back to your to Social Security Jobs and Benefits Office and you say, this is what I've been doing. And if you don't turn up, for example, something happens and you don't turn up and it's not a reasonable excuse, is that you can be then sanctioned. Or if you don't look for work over that period of time between one sign and the next, then you can be what they call sanctioned. And a sanction can mean that you're disqualified from benefits for 4 weeks. The next time it can be 13 weeks. And ultimately it can be 18 months. Now, there's some examples, particularly if you read the papers and things, where in England, Scotland and Wales, people can be sanctioned up to 3 years. Now, I don't know, I couldn't do without my pay for 4 weeks.
And the housing benefit as well?
Everything, yeah. Your benefits would be stopped in total. So you would be evicted. You'd be homeless, out in the street, because of what you hadn't, because you had said, now there will be reasons, and we don't have the detail of this yet, there will be reasons that will be given, but however, universal credit is in. Some of the other aspects of the welfare reform is in England, and there already is people who have been sanctioned, people with mental health issues. Perhaps they haven't turned up for their thing because they just forgot, you know, or they were ill and they didn't turn up and they've been sanctioned, they've been left homeless, and people have, you know, ultimately, suppose paid the sacrifice of they've taken their own lives because they just don't know where to turn to. So, I mean, I don't want us to end on that very downbeat note, because there is some positives, is that here in Northern Ireland, as I said, the trade union movement and lots of others, people working in the advice sector, the law centre, all these organisations have been keeping pressure on all political parties not to introduce the welfare reform bill. But you'll have heard the Fresh Start Agreement has brought the welfare reform bill to us here in Northern Ireland. But part of that also is that there was a lady called Eileen Evison, and her and a few other people were asked to do some what they call mitigations. So that would be some money to offset. So if you're taken off DLA, is hopefully, although the detail of this has all been worked out, so if you were taken off DLA, then there would be some additional money put in for a year. So that might give you the time to go to the advice sector, get the information that you need, fill the forms in again and reapply, so that so you won't lose your benefit in totality, and hopefully then with help and support and advice you will be able to get the benefit back again. They keep saying here is there will be no targets to reach, because certainly in England we actually found out eventually by certain people keeping pressure on politicians, and Ian Duncan Smith, etc., who's the Department of Work and Pensions Minister, that there was actually targets set. So people working in the Social Security offices were told, cut the benefit by 20%, cut it by 10%. So you had to get that many people off. Now they kept saying it wasn't happening until there was a sort of a bit of an undercover issue went on, and then we found out that actually there was targets. So it wasn't about whether you were entitled to it or not, it was just about driving down the number of people who were in receipt of benefits, and therefore driving down how much money the government was prepared to spend on benefits. Because the reality of it is I haven't met too many people who don't want to work. You know, we'll hear in the newspapers, the skivers and the shirkers and all of those. And those are words that are just, they're disgusting words. Because I haven't met too many people who don't want to work. I mean, we have the announcement here in the last week about Bombardier, not that far from where we're sitting here tonight. And 500 people will lose their jobs this year, and another 500 next year. So you go and you'll say to the politicians, are they the shivers in the script? Oh no, not those people. The people in Dunn stores, 50 people lost their jobs. No, it's not those people. And then you go, well, it's the people in Gallagher's and Ballymena. Is that the shivers, the skivers and the shirkers? And you could go on and on and on. There's people in the local shop. No, it's not those. And nobody can actually point out who these people are that's in the media. And it's a disgusting way to refer to people, and we would always challenge that. So I'll maybe stop there, because I'm sure people have lots of questions, but I'll try just to give you an overview. If you think that it's not going to happen, then wake up and smell the coffee, as they say. It is going to happen. The trade union movement has fought the battle hard, and we will continue to fight, and we will continue to support people who are in the situation where you're losing money hand over fist. And I think, and you know, it'd be nice to have more people here this evening, but the reality of it is that I think people's heads are down. People think it isn't going to happen to me, it's going to be the person across the road or up the street or somebody else. It's not going to happen to me, because we've been fighting this welfare reform thing. People have been fighting this, and it's been pushed off, and maybe it'll not happen. I've some leaflets here as well, and I know some maybe live in the area. Lord Street in Avonlea is that tenants in those housing executive properties there will received a letter probably 2-3 weeks ago talking about transferring your homes to a housing association. So this isn't just happening here. This is happening in areas in Ballymena, in Larne, in Rossville, in Derry, Londonderry, and in Portadown, Lurgan, and Ar. But we would argue, and I'll leave some leaflets here, but there has been two estates where this has already happened, or houses where this has happened. One was in the Cregan, it was the first one, up in Londonderry, and the housing executive rents pre the improvement was £52. It was supposed to go up to about £54. Those people are now paying in excess of £86. And while housing benefit might cover that, is that I have no doubt down the road is that housing benefit is going to be cut, like every other benefit. Universal credit will impact on housing benefit, and therefore we would be asking people through this leaflet and exercise, and we probably will have other meetings in those communities about this specific issue. But anybody who lives in that area, or friends live in that area, have some leaflets here, and if you take them with you and spread them around, and then we will do some further work on that in relation to why we would ask people when it becomes the time is to vote against the transfer of your home from the housing executive to a different landlord, probably a housing association, but we'll keep that for another day. So I've probably talked long enough here, so I'll maybe hand back.
Right, we'll open the floor just for some questions. Emma?
Just whenever you were saying about the transfer from I know you said it's for another day, but you just, so we can still vote against that at this stage? And what will they then do if we, as residents, say no? Okay,
in relation to the situation is that at this point in time we've identified those properties for transfer from the housing executive, probably to a housing association. Is that our concerns as a trade union, I mean, and I represent the members in the housing executive, is that the rents will go up for tenants, but also is that when this was first announced and we went round a lot of the councils and stuff, people were saying, and I'm not here to defend the housing executive, but at least we know the housing executive, we know the local staff, and we might not always get the answer we want, but they will speak to us. Where I got examples of maybe the housing association, which was 20, 30 miles up the road. So there wasn't that local issue. The major issue is in relation to the increase in rents, and it's an affordability issue. Because one of the things we'll probably will say is you won't be able to get the improvements to your home if you don't transfer to a housing association. Where we're arguing is that the housing executive should be allowed to borrow the money, just like the housing association, to do those improvements to the properties. But in this new arrangement, some of the properties, and I'm not familiar with Lord Street, I don't know whether they all need improvement works done to them or whether there's some who already have had that done. But they're going to transfer all the houses. So, for example, if you didn't need any improvement to your house, like windows, bathrooms, new kitchen, is that your house would be transferred. You'd have necessarily no improvements to your home, but your rents are going to increase. So for some of those reasons, that's why we would argue is that be asking tenants to vote no. But we'll do a lot of work in that area, leaflet, and then maybe have meetings in that particular area.
Okay.
Gee, funny you saying that there about the improvements. The ones are actually putting new kitchen and stuff in the likes of Lord Street and that the Wi-Fi made. All right, Maggie? So we think that's what the build-up is. So we did that work now where the is the rat.
Yep.
Then there's also, you say there's old houses,
Yeah.
you know, listed building things. And then there's more trouble enough with damp and all in them. You know, so they're out more money back and forth, repairing all them.
Yeah. I'm not saying, I'm quite sure that a lot of the properties need a lot of work done to them. But some of the information that we have had, even from some of the tenants in the first estate that I talked about, was that they were told their rent will increase by about £20 a week, where it's increased by about nearly £40 a week. And their concern is if there's cuts to housing benefit, then what that's going to mean, and potentially your housing benefit isn't going to cover all of your additional rent. And then with the cuts, the other financial cuts I was talking about, then you can see where that's leading to somewhere down the road.
Yeah, I have to be careful what I'm saying here because I'm a civil servant and we're governed by a set of principles, but it's a higher level view than that. It's what they call small scale housing stock transfer. Big terminology. It basically means that there's 2,000 units, 2,000 houses out there, and what they're going to do is they're just going to give these to these housing associations. They're not even going to pay, they're not even going to give any money over whatsoever. They're just going to give these housing units over to these housing associations. And what will be the upshot of this? The area that I work in actually looks after the Housing Policy and Legislation Division within the ASD. And one of the things that has happened there is that we found this out by a roundabout way. I look after the trade union side in there. I also, in my day job as well, I'm a rep for NIPSA. And one of the things that we discovered was that in the middle of this, there was a political reason behind doing this, and nobody could actually discover what it was. I was actually pulled into one of the director's offices and told, look, you're going to have to stop raising questions about this because there's a political mandate here and it has to be dealt with. Now, obviously, whenever that was done, we dug our heels in as a trade union side. So single-handedly, we've been trying to fight this off and fight it off. Incidentally, before Christmas, they actually put a team in place to look at all that, those 2,000 units to see exactly. If you want to talk about it in monetary terms, it's about £90 million worth of housing stock that is going to be moving from the housing executive out to these private landlords. Now, and again, with all the cuts to housing benefits and everything else, how are people going to actually afford to live in those houses? So you get a wee sweetener, new kitchen, maybe a new set of stairs, something nice out the back of the garden, something like that there, only to discover, see in another couple of months' time, your rent will go up by about 40 to 50%. That's what you're looking at, folks.
So why are them houses being transferred?
Yep. At the minute, yes.
Why are those houses being transferred for no money?
Well, have to be careful what I'm saying here. Possibly the best answer that I could give you would be, as I said, there's a political agenda behind it. Whether that be I have to be careful what I'm saying.
That's it, right. That's anybody.
You're probably aware of the whole red sky thing, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, let's just say that's pretty raw in certain quarters.
Yeah.
So it is, and that's probably part of the reason why there's a political push to try and get this done in that manner. And that's probably the best. If you want to come and talk to me afterwards, I'll tell you the real reason. But that's the
Yep.
that's the background to it.
Okay.
So sorry for not sort of
That's all right.
semi-answering your question.
Okay.
So basically, they put the new kitchen, they put their hand up, so you're paying for the new kitchen.
Yeah. Yep.
And then
Yeah.
later date, they can just fire you out and sell the house on.
That's it.
They get ready, they don't want to let you there, they just want the money.
Why don't you take it up the rich? Pardon? Why don't you start taxing the rich more? Leaving the poor alone?
I think Joe's going to come on and say a few bits about that.
Just on that, we'll let Joe say what he has to say, and then we can take more questions.
Okay, Joe Law, I've been a lifetime trade unionist, which is quite a long time, as you can see. But yeah, the last question is a big question, because it's a question about society. What is society? Why are we here? I mean, we had a big downturn in 2008, and I don't think anybody here was involved in it. The banking crash, the financial wizards stole your future, and your children's future, and your grandchildren's future. And he's involved in that. I doubt it, looking around the room. Certainly I wasn't. That's what we're living with now. That was the excuse to, as I wasn't said, I mean, this is not, forget about money. All this cuts and downturn is not about money. You're living in one of the richest countries in the world. I have a wee leaflet printed out, see that wee folder, if you want. It's in Times Paper's rich list. And they have doubled, the most richest 1,000 people in the country have doubled their wealth within the last year. Have you done? And you've just heard what's going to happen to you. So that's the thing we need to ask. What is this all about? It is not about money, it's about ideology. And since the last government was elected in Westminster, the coalition, which is now a Conservative government, they've gone after us. They've gone after the public sector, because the public sector's very poor, isn't it? It's not efficient. We're pushing it into the private sector, and they've gone after wages and conditions. We are now living in a society where young people, for the first time since we know in history, if you like, young people now are worse off than their parents. Every generation was an improvement. I'll give you some examples of myself. I've worked all my life, and I now enjoy 2 pensions. Old age pension and a final salary scheme pension from the organisation I call it Shorts, not Bombardier. It was also sold off for nothing to that Bombardier crowd. And since they have taken it over, they have stopped the ability, they don't have the ability to make a plane anymore, which they did then. All they do is assemble stuff. And that new plane that's not going very well, because when I worked there, we worked for British Aerospace, Fokker, Boeing. We made parts for all these companies. They don't do that anymore, not very much. So Bombardier goes any further down, then where's it going to go? Because the Quebec government's already put billions into it. They'll take it back home. So that's the nature of the world that we live in. What we have to do is ask the question, why? And it is, again, it's not about money. Well, all right, maybe I'll explain it this way. I grew up after the Second World War. I was born just after the war. My parents grew up in the 30s. Anybody remember the 30s? Or your parents telling you stories about it? Well, we're going back to it. Certainly your children are, and you hear what's in front of you. That's what you're going back to. Almost starvation. used to slag about, no, Belfast there, about I run about his arse out of his trousers. Well, people were. But after they fought the Second World War, there's a bad example of the First World War is people did come back to abject poverty in the 20s and 30s. That the people who came back from the war and the people who endured it, saying that's not going to happen again. We're going to create a better society. And after fighting a war for 6 years, the country must have been really skint, mustn't it? Which is it isn't now. We built the health service and the welfare state. I had an older sister who had rickets. None of the rest of us had rickets. You know what I mean? All that sort of stuff. That stopped. In all my life I've been a trade unionist, so I've been covered by a trade union. I got the right rate for the job. I got whatever benefits were in that job, and we fought for better and better benefits over the years. Well, that doesn't happen now, does it? We're very weak as a trade union movement, and most people aren't in trade unions. And we're now working for minimum wage, if you're lucky, part-time contracts, or this lovely new thing they've invented, 0-hour contracts. Isn't that quite amazing? They give you a job, but they don't give you any hours. And what is all that about? Who makes money out of that? So what we need to do is continually ask the question why, and continually argue about how we change, because we did do after the Second World War. The world changed dramatically for everyone's life, because we had what they call a social democratic process. We had strong trade unions, and people weren't allowed to starve or become destitute. And the other thing that happened here, now it might have been because of the conflict as such, the housing executive is one of the greatest examples of social housing in Europe at the time. But it, over the years, was dismantled because the funding was taken away from it. Because remember the housing executive, now they might have built some dodgy houses and flats. They did. I'm a Shanker Road man, so remember the flats, the Weetabix flats, the bottom of Shanker fell down. And okay, but the rest of it, my mum moved into the bottom of Shanker in 1976 at 60 years of age, and it's the first time she had a bath and heating and a toilet inside her house. Big change, wasn't it? And the rent was okay, was affordable. All that has disappeared to the private sector. All right? All of it's gone. And then Maggie sold all the houses off. And it might have been an individual who got a house cheaper than they would have done. But when they moved on or died or whatever, all of that was taken over by the private sector, which is now causing fortunes to rent. So where's young people going to go? Sorry, I've had a wee bit of a rant because listening to it, somebody asked a question, and that's what's happening to this society. So what type of society do you want? That's what we have to ask for. And I know it's difficult here, we're a very divided society, and the working class people are very divided. And one of the things they want us to do is to pick on somebody. Is to look at somebody who's getting DLA and you're not. Or somebody from somewhere else who's got a job and you haven't. That's the type of stuff they want us to be involved in. We need to think a wee bit beyond that. We need to start thinking about how society was for the likes of me, and why it's not like that now. Because we had some control over a capitalist world. We said the employers, somebody said about paying tax, they had to pay the tax, they had to pay the rate for the job. We had pension schemes and sick pay schemes and things like that. They've all been dismantled only in certain areas. And why they're after the public sector is the place where unions are still have a foothold. And that's why they want to dismantle it. They'll dismantle, see every public sector job that's lost, that's a service all yous don't get. And you won't get. Health service. What's the difficulties with it? Thank you. Waiting times. Pushing people to go into private surgery, don't they? If you have small surgery, a couple of £1,000. Now, that's the consultants who are working in our hospitals. And I go in with whatever, me and you have carpet tonight. We need an open heart surgery. And If I have 15 grand in my hip, I get it done next week, you'll probably die. Is that what we built the health service for? I'm pretty sure it wasn't what I thought it was built for. It was built for everybody. So, and I have a friend whose daughter's a consultant, and she gets into a great deal of trouble because she doesn't have a private list. She refuses to have a private list. So all these things need to be examined and be looked at. And the only way that we can change it is together, collectively, challenging our politicians, and most importantly, challenge the system that allows this to happen. I mean, think about it. The 21st century, we have families relying on food banks. How did it come to this?
People down the street.
People down on the street, correct. Yeah. So the thing is, it shouldn't be like this. It's not necessary. And the only people who benefit from this is certainly not us, but those with the money, who are getting more and more and more money every day. Have we look at that thing? There's wee leaflets down there, just to give you an idea of what's happening. And we shouldn't allow that to happen in our society. So, thanks for listening. I'll shut up now because I think we should have sort of questions. Not that we'll have all the answers. Okay, cheers.
Anyone, any more questions?
I think everybody's just in shock. Yeah, yeah. How are we going to sort this out, really? It's not going to be sorted out, is it?
You asked about maybe tracking everything together. What way do you see that?
Well, if you're at work, join a union. Not only join a union, become involved in a union. Unions are only as good as the people who participate in them, if that's possible. Other than that, your communities should start to be asking questions.
I'll give you a great example. I do that just when I was working. And I was working, he worked on like a wholesale puree. And they come up to the start of the union within the work. Because it's the start of the union within the work, the boss can let them off.
Yeah.
You know, so
That's
we're trying to safeguard themselves, and what he done was just sack them off.
Yeah.
So we're putting our job in jeopardy by somebody trying to join a union.
Well, that's...
Send that put people wrong.
Why did he sack him, do you think? What's he worried about? People coming together and collectively having a conversation with the boss?
About joining the union. There was out, they tried to start one, and they ended up with no jobs.
And again, that's about ideology. That's political leaders will have dismantled the power that unions have, the ability that unions have to protect its members, and the fact that they can do that now, because there's no big industries where you can get unions. There are small industries. Somebody puts their head up, wants to join a union, they're sacked. And it's an example of what they're doing to us. It's an example of, you said, what can we do? I understand that, but what we can do is ask the question why, continually. Why is it going to be like this? Why does it have to be like this? It doesn't have to be. And it's like somebody said one time, they can think, like here we have a very violent past over the last recent years, haven't we? See the parents are being not worried. See when you reach for a gun, they're not really worried too much about that. It's when you reach for a book, they're worried.
I work in a company at 75.
Sorry?
I work in a company at 75% of the people in the union. Not a small organisation, a large organisation. In England, the union had absolutely no sway whatsoever on anything that happened in the company. That was for the company was called Orange before it became management, and then became France Telecom. It's called Orange, but the original Orange. And there was 75% of the workforce were members of the union. And the union had no sway when it came to being sold to management. So when it comes to unions, trade unions, I don't have much. I've worked all my life as well. I've been in unions different times, and I don't see unions as being the way forward on it, unfortunately.
I'm not telling you that unions are wonderful places. I've been receiving the end of difficulties within the union, but I will never, ever, other than a member of the union. And when unions and the movement is weak, then those things arise. that you may be a member of the company will all be. That can happen. It doesn't mean the same. If we didn't have unions, we'd have the amendment.
Say spokesmen and all get back on it and shut up.
Well, you could say that about all organisations, couldn't you? You know what I mean? That's why the thing is that
That's a common thing.
you need to participate. You can't just hold a card. You need to find out where your meetings are. You need to go to them. You need to participate. That's what unions are about. You know, and lots of people do. And this room here, Ryan talking about that. You need to be involved, and you can't just let it be run by a couple of boys you go, that's, you think it's all right. It's a participative process. But there is flaws and there's difficulties. I'm not saying that will solve the problem. But what I'm saying is, when we were in unions and when we were strong, I certainly benefited from it all my life.
I think
Maybe just
people, sorry, I think a lot of people have just given up, to be honest with you. And the fact is, seriously, who really is going to listen to us? Like, when we leave here, I feel as though we're going out our knees.
Okay, what can we do about this? I think that's the question. What can we do about this? Is that in another few short weeks, beginning of May, we're going to have an election. Now, we're going to have people coming around the doors looking for our votes. Pardon? We're going to have people coming around the doors looking for our votes. We need to ask them on the doorstep. You know, well, I live in Lord Street. I want to stay with the housing executive. What are you going to do to make sure that happens? What are you going to do to make sure my rents don't increase?
Everything put me in and then we'll sort it out.
No.
That's what they're like. That's what they're like.
I tell you pure lies.
That's what they're
You want
like.
to hear the shit we're Ballarat that over the years what they've told us, and I never seen any, you know what I mean, to me, most of the politicians, sorry, I'm going to say what they like with my guy, you come to my door, my guy, know you, and it's not because I know her or anything, a genuine person that's going to tell us the truth. And
See the thing about North Street now, it's a DUP stronghold, and I don't have any fear of them whatsoever, so I wouldn't even listen to what they tell me.
no, I'm not, no.
Lord Street, I mean, I probably still have the Lord Street down the river,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to support.
No, we're not on it.
No,
we're not against you.
No, about any political party, but what I'm saying is,
But I'm
when they
saying,
do turn up
yeah.
and say, well, you know the last time there was an election and you came to my door and I asked you these things and you promised me X, Y and Z and you didn't deliver. So this time, I'm not voting for you, I'm going to vote for somebody else. And see if we all did that and we just didn't go, well, it's been DUP and my family's all, they voted DUP all their lives, and my grandfathers and all the rest of them have only voted that. Then, see, I'm going to tell you something, if I was in West Belfast, I might be saying, and if you vote Sinn Féin, and all, so it's the same.
Excuse me, but see, where
But
I
see,
live,
but see,
politicians don't even come to your door, they send geriatrics. Wee men that you couldn't even raise your voice to, you know, or even ask. You feel sorry for them? They've just got these wee men and women to go and put the leaflets through doors because they haven't got the decency to come and speak face to face with the working class people in the communities that are suffering the worst.
Yeah, because
Do
they're not
people vote
interested.
then or not?
I vote, yeah.
Still voting?
Yeah. I vote for the person,
Once
not
the
the
election,
Or it's getting these days now, who you took the vote for.
Exactly, you know what I
Who do you
mean?
trust?
Well, that just not
To
what
be honest, everyone up back now are more interested in getting themselves a raise, never mind sorting out what people need on the ground.
Joe, you see, years ago, you know this country, and everybody in here, we would come out 1,000, 1,000,000, you know what I mean? We'll have all, nobody wants to come out now because, as I say, at the end of the day, exactly, give up because nobody is interested. You watch these politicians and all, even ours, right, on the, what do you call him, the Nolan and all this here. You tell me once, one person that has ever give a direct answer. So why ask a question? That's like me asking you a question and you giving me the runaround. you know,
politicians be burdened.
they just go in, they don't give you a direct answer.
Yeah.
So
That's why
to
we need
me-
an independent
to
from in
me,
the area.
you know,
Hear, hear.
They're, to me, that they're
People that are
liars and
answerable
they're
to us.
thieves.
People that are in the area, that live in the area, and you know who they are, and you're able to go to their door and say, you told me this, why is it not happening? The only way forward here from this, and East Belfast, is to go and do an independent funeral.
They're exactly, yes, yes.
As long as the main thing is what I'm figuring out, the only thing we have is the franchise, and we fought hard for that. And the thing is, if you don't vote or you don't see anybody you want to vote for, or you can run a local candidate, fine. But do not vote. If you don't want any of them, go and spoil your vote.
But Joe, that's how bad the
But Joe, what
politicians in the
happens
past
then?
have got
So what
people
happens
that
if
don't
you
even want to go and vote.
If you don't vote,
Do
you
you
get...
have the answer? If you don't vote,
Yeah.
where does it go then if you're saying don't vote?
No, I didn't say
You're
don't
saying
vote.
No, he
do
said
not
spoil it.
go and spoil it, but if you don't go and spoil it, what
Because
happens?
what I mean is, it's rather than people not going. Because if we stood for election here, and I would only need like 6 votes, if they only got 2 or 3.
If you just go and go and vote, so then they say that there's so many votes
Yeah.
for it, so that you don't
They claim you.
Well, that happened the last time, and we
doesn't
all
make
said
any
that
difference.
a lot of people had spoiled their vote, but there was no question asked.
It does make a
Why?
difference. You see,
Nobody
It's
cared whether
giving
you
you,
spoiled it
no,
or
but it's
not.
giving you a percentage of who's coming in to vote and who's not.
When you
That's
look-
That's what it's to
like
give
that,
you.
you know what I
You
mean?
look-
Nobody
you look
ever
at
came and
percentages.
asked questions why.
if you
No,
look at
that's
percentage
what's
of
for.
voting across Northern Ireland at the last election, there was 72% of the nationalists came out to vote.
Like it's a taxi sat in the door and they're waiting for them to vote.
What percentage? What do you think percentage of the Protestants came out?
Probably 2, 10,
About
40%.
46%.
Can I just say something? The original question was, what can we do? Why can we do it? You're doing it now. You're having that kid. You're talking about the stuff, the facts and the figures. You're doing that now. Somebody has said about standing independent candidates. The bottom line is the only way any change will be achieved is by meetings like this to sit around and discuss that. And here's the thing. See, people of my generation, I know I look about 12, but I'm not, I'm about 34.
Who said you look 12?
Thanks, Joe. I mean, the bottom line is, for us, Joe's right, we are going to be a lot worse off. I mean, my son, he's 21 months now, and, you know, he's starting to look at all these different things. We took him to, I live in Woodville, so I do, and we wandered down the Shankill, went into Dover Street, and that was a residential place for obviously for older people, and at the end of that they put a play park, so they did, and that was the Northern Play Park. That wouldn't have been there had it not been for people in the local area saying, hold on a wee second, we have nothing down this end. We want something done about this. And do you see if that means doorstepping politicians? And by doorstepping, I mean going into their constituency office and go, come here, I want you. I want to tell you about this. Or you go in with the petition. Well,
if we offered them here, we can call it.
Do you know what? That speaks volumes in itself.
You go to their office
Well,
and
it's
get the
not very
police
often
first.
you get them in their offices, to be honest.
What do you do to get the police to come?
Yeah, you'll not get the real politicians in. It may say Peter Robinson above the door, but I don't think he's ever put a step through it.
See, this
It
is
may say somebody else.
They
It's
all
always
need
the
to change.
people.
They
It's
all
always the
need-
people that's in the workforce behind it. doing it.
but it's like
See, at the end of the day, who do you turn to?
Each other.
Do you turn
Yourself.
to?
Yourself.
Other. You know what I was going to say? Everybody in the room.
Everybody in here brought another
You
student
go out,
to the
you
next
go out
meeting.
from this meeting and you tell your friends and your family and you talk about it
You get them
and they
to the
talk
next
to somebody else, and maybe the next night you come back here, there'll be twice or 3 times the many people.
I'll wait until their benefits coming in, they'll be rapping on the
but
door.
that-
Queuing out there.
Yeah, but for sake of argument,
Sometimes
water
you
charges,
get
I'll be in it.
if it
They'll
hadn't
be
been,
queuing out there. What's their bet? I don't make no car unless it happens to their
No, but I'm not
door.
there, not dead head at the head when she says nobody cares anymore.
Nobody cares.
no,
Because they've lost
Joe,
faith in everything. They're just sitting there waiting on it to happen because they know they can't change things.
Exactly.
We're sitting in here the night with all these people, we still can't change
Last
anything.
10 people
Joe,
were
you
starved,
see when you
many
get-
people
when
were
you were-
criminalised.
People just give up, people just accept it now, because nobody else paid for it.
Yeah. Joe, do you see when you said you were a shop steward role in the big man for all those years ago? See when you were in it, and in our team, everybody stood online and count and we're with you 100%, and then to come out with you, and you see the like of shorts wouldn't have been in that mess, those stores wouldn't have been closed. And now, how many would there be obvious? 5, 10? That would be it.
The point I was trying to make is, yes,
yeah.
over the last
It's all changed.
20 or 30 years, that, I would call it the right wing. The capitalist system is winning.
The
Because
proper way.
I mean, I know people who were chased out of shorts, who were, you know, got rid of because they were speaking out. And that will happen. You were saying about that guy started to form a union out. Those things will happen. We're at a very, very low wage. I'm not saying to you this is going to change tomorrow, and it might not change for your life. Somebody asked me that years ago, you know, what are you always talking about this and stuff? Nothing changing in your lifetime. It's not about my lifetime. It's about how this society is and where it's going. Like here, particularly in this wee part of the world, we're at a very low age, aren't we? We're a very divided society, working class, very divided. And we've had years of violence. That's not over, is it? And we have young people with nothing. Groups of young men in working class areas with nothing and no future. Where are they going to go? Where are they going to go?
I think you live in our city, not worried about the gun anymore, or worried about the book. And that's the trauma, working class, PEL community. Not becoming educated.
Education.
And our kids aren't going to university and learn. I know a few of my friends, Jimmy Bryson, he's going through the toll on that. And because he became as smart as a man, and I would love to see another 2,000 more.
Davy, what did I tell you whenever I'm sitting in class, all the names of the people around me?
Right, hold on.
What's that? Yes, yeah, universities, exactly, it's just...
Well, we're not saying it's easy to actually fight some of this stuff. You know, we as a trade union go 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and welfare reform was a perfect example of that. See, when it was first needed, everybody was just, yes, go ahead, bring it all in, take line and sinker, and we have fought, and being the only union stand fighting on welfare reform.
Well, I ain't got the charge of it.
If you would have had those mitigations wouldn't have happened. You would have had the bedroom tax, the benefit cap, and it would have been introduced away last year sometime. And that's the reason that all that has been brought in, is because NIPSA had said no. And I mean, even when the French start agreement came out, NIPSA had come out and said that they didn't agree with it. And they're the only union again that has come out, so we're the only union still sitting fighting.
They tie our community up in all these big words, Denise. They tie them up.
I don't understand how the government don't realise we keep on cutting people, cutting their money and cutting their benefits and cutting their legs below them. Do they not realise that criminality is going to become massive, because people are going to have to provide money for their families, and regardless of what way they get it, they'll get it. And if it means that they have to go back to start again, it will happen. It will happen. People will provide for their families regardless of what way they get it.
They do realise, and they want that to happen, because by dividing us down that line, they're able to keep control. That
But
means
when
you
it tell you
don't
something,
ask
if you come at Christmas time, when there's no job, there's no money for kids for Christmas, people will go out and get the stuff where they get it from.
That's 100%
That's
right.
100%. Yeah. And who are we to turn around and say it's the wrong way? Because see, when the first Christmas of some 4 or 5-year-old gets up, there's nothing there. They don't understand when you say to them, why the government done this, the government done that. They just want to know why Santa wasn't here. So the stuff will come no matter what way. Criminality will become a massive part. It already is a massive thing, but it'll get bigger and bigger.
Homeless,
Yeah.
big massive problem with homeless now as it is. I think where people are going to come from so bad.
Well, that's the one thing that I know we were saying, what can we do about this? Well, I mean, I know again NIPSA are involved in local fights in different places that to do with care homes that are closing, and even like bodies in front of the buildings and stuff like that. You just have to give us a shout, and we would happily coordinate with us and get out there and show that there's a presence, because that's the only way to get it. I mean, we've had people who have stood outside buildings for weeks and weeks and weeks until they get any result. But it's the only, you have to persevere, and that's the stuff that you have to do.
What about them wee lads that lost their job that Dave was talking about, the 12 of them wanted to try and get themselves involved in the union? Why would one of the big unions like yourself not pay in there and go, what are you doing? This is not happening.
Well, we didn't, I mean,
You know what I mean? There's 12 people trying to get themselves involved in unions, and whenever it comes across to get there, why does none of the unions come and say, "Hey, hold on a minute, we're coming in, you're not doing that"?
But say for example, see, I think, you know, some of the stuff started off here about welfare, it's a big issue, it's a massive big issue, and probably the elephant's almost too big, so we can't do anything about it. You know, that, and, you know, that's coming across very clear. We have to accept our lot, you know, we're almost got to the stage as well. There's nothing we can do about it, so we just have to accept our lot. But say take this issue, and people will decide for themselves. But everybody, and this is about, we're saying, oppose the transfer, say no, because the one thing is that we have held the department to is everybody will get a vote. So as a tenant, every tenant will have a vote about whether to stay with the housing executive or go to the new landlord. And they have to get all the information.
What happens if they all say no?
So they all say no, they stay with the housing executive. And see if the ones in then Portadown, they're going through exactly the same, and they say no, and the houses in Ballymena and Larne, and they say no, and the houses and the tenants in Rossvale and in Derry, and they say no. Then what you're doing is, sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but two fingers up. Okay, so what,
Do they move on to a new area then?
no, but everybody, you know, if you keep saying no, then from that community, then is actually, we do have some power. So then to come after closing your school for your kids, then you can say is, well, we'll see them off from the house thing. See the next time they come for whatever the service is, whether that's at the primary school, whether that's in relation to a day centre, because they're after your day centres too, are going to close those. So people with mental health issues and day centres, they're going to be closed. But so all these little wins, see if the community pull together. It's because we're all we're all in our wee silos, we can't do anything, so we'll just have to accept our lot. But when you come together, and it might start off with half a dozen people out leafleting, cajoling, telling people about this issue or the day centre or the primary school or whatever the issue happens to be, and see once you get that wee spark and that you give yourselves and your community the confidence that you don't have to accept everything, then you get wee wins, and then that wee win becomes another win, becomes a bigger win, and then do you know something? The politicians will start listening to you. Otherwise, they'll just say, through school closure,
I'm part of Murder in on the road.
I didn't look at that. Where was the community to start with this?
Because
No one's doing this.
see, 20 years ago, you'd have stopped me and said, could you tell me you were such a person live? And I could have said, I live down 67 to Legan Street. Yeah. Nah. Because they're all from fucking Timbuktu.
You're thing about that, but that goes back to the Reagan days, there no such thing as community, everybody's the individual. Just get on, never mind on any of that. And that sort of purple got right through the community. Everybody goes off.
But see, that's about the true about the community saying no. They're not saying no from us, they're saying no, not the situation we're in. I mean, nobody wants to listen.
The thing is that, what the idea, yes, it seems as if it's almost impossible. But, I mean, it never is. Things can't change. It's about creating a situation where people start having this sort of debate, discussing things. I know the big thing you not ever ask us, if you like, working classes, why? Why do you have to do that? Why is that happening? That's the big question. Why? And ask your kids, your friends, your relatives, everybody else, why? Why are they doing that?
Well, can you give them some of the examples of the stuff that we've done or the campaigns that we've had at the minute that were successful?
Okay, we have, right, well, in relation to, what?
Well, there was Explorers.
Yeah, Explorers.
Water charges.
Water charges, you would have had water charges 10 years ago if it hadn't been for the trade union movement who started off, and it was one of those things, and I'll tell you something, we nearly killed each other in our own conferences about saying, should we oppose water charges, should we not oppose water charges, because what was going to happen, if we didn't have water charges, by this stage we were going to be standing at the end of the street you know, with their pumps again.
Is that what she's being told?
You know, yeah, but that was the situation. So we stood against water charges. I mean, I was in, about 2 years ago, I was in Sammy Douglas's office down in Newton Arch Road, and I said to him, why are people on the lower Newton Arch Road, why are they not in your office shouting about welfare reform? What's this going to mean for people? And he went, I don't know. And he says, he said to me, why aren't the trade union movement organising protests in the street? And I said, you're the elected politician in this area. People should be angry about this. People should be out on the street protesting. You know, think about the time of the poll tax in England. There was thousands of people out in the street, week in, week out, until the government had to back down. If they turn around and say,
big fancy words, and people don't understand it.
I think we need to educate our children.
Our community has no sense of stickability.
Can I give you an example?
Folks, just before we do need to sort of wrap it up. So last 5 minutes.
I'll just give you a quick example. Something close to my heart. And Nice had sort of touched on it there. Victoria Park Care Home. My granny was in there. She has now subsequently moved on to somewhere else. There was a study done that whenever people with dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff like that, there, you know, whenever they move, whenever they transfer to somewhere else, there does become an increased rate of mortality, and subsequently, since those people have been moved out of that home for them, have actually passed away since moved out of it. Now, here's the thing, here's the rub. That was a private company, a multi-billion-pound company. It was right on our back, went the wrong direction, right down there, right in your doorstep. And what had happened was all those folks in there, they worked, I mean, from morning, noon and night. They were there all the time. They were familiar with it. Absolutely wonderful, wonderful staff. I don't know why anybody is here from that area or what, or anybody that used to work in it. But I went on the Nolan show, and one of the things, and the reason why I didn't, because I don't usually engage with it, because to me it's just junk food radio. But anyway, I went on because we received a letter out, paid £7.50 for the emergency, for the postage that came from that on the day that there would be a meeting that night to basically discuss what they were going to do. They were hoping that nobody was going to turn up. But what they have done is they went to Bedford Street. There's a big corporate bank. They talk about welfare for everybody else, but they don't talk about corporate welfare, where these companies can come in and get multi-million pounds worth of loans or grants to set up. Then what they do is, exactly as that company's done, see whenever they're not making a profit, they piss off somewhere else. So there's folks out of jobs, the most vulnerable in society having to scramble about to find somewhere else to live. And who's picking up the pieces? Us. It's as simple as that.
4 passed away.
There were 4, I don't care what anybody says, maybe it's the wrong thing to say, there's 4, as far as I'm concerned, 4 direct fatalities out of that.
Yeah, over the head.
That's over the head. This is the type of thing that they're doing, and this is why the only people that's going to change this is us. Having these discussions here, it's a small step, but it's a step in the right direction. Do you know what I mean? You can see it in your own community, what's happening. I can certainly see it in Woodvale. I can see it in the lower part of the Shankill as well. You know, these are areas of abject poverty, deprivation. Food bank use has gone up something like 400%. 400%. Like, you know, okay, people might say, well, I'm not going to starve, I'm not going to... But there's an example that you give. Somebody's out in the street, died. Was it 3 fatalities? Right?
There's also the people that are starved because they're embarrassed to go to it, because they've used the money all their lives.
Yeah,
they're going hungry.
Their kids.
Well, I mean, and then you said about kids not being as well off. You know, we've seen an example right here. You're talking about 70 kids running about the streets, terrorising the area. Did nothing. Nothing. They've lost their way.
And no respect for anything, because
no
society's getting them. Remember, you live in one of the richest countries in the world.
Yeah.
Well, it's not one of them kids who won't pay my window if they get sent by their stones or thrown, you know.
See, if you fight, you might lose, right? See, if you don't fight, you'll definitely lose. Yeah. That's the reality of it. The only thing that we can do is do what we can in our own communities and try and build it together. It's a slow process, but we're getting there, and we are getting there, because there are things that we're doing and keeping the pressure on them politicians, because I'm telling you, they'll be coming around looking for your votes. And remember all this.
I'll give you a quote from a fella called Buffett, one of the richest men in the world. can't remember his first name, it's gone out of my head. Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, and he says for the last 30 years there has been a class war, and we're winning it.
Yeah.
So we need to start fighting back.
Yeah.
But we need to know who the enemy are, and we need to know what we want.
Where's he now? I won't say him.
At least he's honest, isn't he?
Okay.
One of the richest men in the world.
First of all, I just want to say thank you to Alison and Joe. A big round of applause. And folks, if we don't take anything out of tonight's meeting, just take the one thing. If we stand together, we can change things. But if we all hide away in our own wee cupboards, nothing's going to happen. Another thing, in relation to the Unheard forces, there's other events coming up. Please keep an eye on the Facebook. And the next one, let's this has probably been the lowest that we've ever had in an event, but let's start building it up again. And the reason probably being is a lot of people think the welfare cuts aren't going to have an impact, but I mean, who's in the room tonight, you have heard, it's going to have a major impact in society. And if people don't wake up late now, God help us as a community when it does come.